Hi. Uh, I'm really moved and very happy and of course very proud. And I was told that that's about all I had to say. You don't have to say anything. But I would like, nevertheless, to say a couple of words, a few more words, in correction of now Professor and then Professor and Chancellor McGill, not for the sake of correcting, that there were two faculty members in that room. Joe Watson, who had everything to lose because he was a beginning assistant professor in chemistry, and myself, who was already tenure, I didn't have much to lose. And the reason is that Joe was the advisor. In those days, there were advisors for the students' organizations. I don't know these days whether they're official or not. Anyway, he was the advisor of BSU, the Black Student Union, and I was the advisor of MECHA, Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán. And of course, how could we be that and not go where the students weren't? Especially since that bunch was the first bunch of non-Anglo students, really, of in any quantities on this campus, because when I arrived on this campus in '64, there were no students at all, and then in '65, '66, there were no blacks, no Chicanos, there never were many Native Americans, unfortunately, and there were very few Asian Americans. At any rate, the reason I mention that is because it has been said, and it must not forgotten, Third College is probably the only college on this campus and in many places where the history of itself is continually repeated. The memory of the consciousness, the awareness of where it comes from and where it wanted to go and where it is going and has come. And it has to be remembered constantly that those students are the ones who made the college. They thought about it, they fought for it, and then they organized it. They participated in everything, driving us crazy most of the time. They were in all committees. They organized, invented and organized the recruiting in the community, in the schools. They tried to convince the counselors in the schools that they should be allowed in, and so on and so on. And they painted walls, they fixed doors. They, in fact, built a whole lecture hall for us, what later became the bookstore. And besides that, they were supposed to study. Naturally, as you can imagine, or as you probably know, the casualties were very heavy. And it's peculiar in these days when students come to your office and so adamantly argue for you to give them an A- instead of a B+, as if a B+ were a bad grade. It's interesting how those students really were thinking more about people today in Thurgood Marshall College than they were thinking about themselves. It's amazing that young people like that should have a vision of the future that took them so far into so many risks, including their own careers. And so that's all I wanted to say, except that I know that if some of them were out there and saw me in this outfit, they'd say, Blanco, what are you doing there, you know? But I have an answer for them. I have an answer for them is that if I imagine if they're there and they're thinking that and laughing, I say it's okay because I'm really dedicating this thing to you. Thank you.
Since I'm your last speaker, I will try to be mindful of a remark made by one of my predecessors. He gave a lot of speeches, and he said that many of them had been criticized for one reason or another, but he never, ever had a speech criticized for being too short. But I want to use the occasion to say something about Thurgood Marshall, the man for whom we have named this college. All great men and women have many more friends and acquaintances in retrospect than in reality. I would like to claim that I was a personal friend of Thurgood Marshall, but the truth is, as a youngster, I interviewed him for a book I was writing on the role of federal judges in the implementation of Brown versus Board of Education, and I found him to be open, engaging, and inspiring. As a young activist and member of the NAACP, I listened to him and admired him and considered him to be one of my heroes. Now, that was in the early days of the civil rights struggle, when what he was doing was not just politically incorrect, but indeed personally dangerous. It took a small band of dedicated attorneys in the NAACP Legal Education and Defense Fund, and remember some courageous plaintiffs, some school children and their parents, and some stalwart judges, and lots of other people, many of whom are on this platform in this audience. But over time, the justice of their cause appealed to our national conscience and sparkled a revolution in the behavior and attitude of millions of people. And in the process, they expanded the opportunity for millions of people as well. Once change has occurred, we tend to assume that it was inevitable. But in fact, bringing about real change is tremendously difficult. It takes individual men and women with an unusual degree of character, courage, and determination. As a young professor, I admired Thurgood Marshall for his moral and intellectual leadership. And as an old professor, I have a keener appreciation of how rare such leadership really is. How lucky we are that it takes roots in the hearts of a few special and unforgettable individuals in each generation. Thurgood Marshall was one of those individuals, an advocate of unsurpassed eloquence and a Supreme Court justice of distinguished accomplishment. It is therefore entirely appropriate that we are here today to dedicate this college in the name of a man whose record as advocate and judge reflects the educational philosophy of Thurgood College. Thurgood Marshall put his great learning at the service of society through involvement in the problems, struggles, and issues of his time. That ideal that he fought for, a society that includes rather than excludes, is also the ideal of any American college or university worthy of its character. It's especially appropriate to this college, which has chosen to put diversity and social responsibility at the heart of the educational enterprise. Occasions like this are an opportunity to rededicate ourselves to the fundamental purposes we cherish. I hope you will leave today with a renewed commitment to the educational ideals of Thurgood Marshall College and renewed determination to put them to work in your own studies, your own scholarship, and your own lives. And now let me fulfill one of my most pleasant official responsibilities as I speak those words that will inspire all of us. By the authority vested in me as president and acting for the regents of the university and for the faculty, students, staff, and alumni of the University of California, San Diego, I am pleased and proud to designate officially this college as Thurgood Marshall College. May the spirit of that great and dedicated man preside over the teaching and learning that take place here forever. Thank you.